For anyone who frequently watches this channel, you know that I am a big Hyatt fanboy. I've stayed at all different Hyatts around the world, whether it be $100 Hyatt Places a night or $2,000 night Park Hyatts. Hyatt has treated me very well, and honestly, some of my fondest memories are at Hyatt hotels. In this video, I'm going to do a rundown of my top 6 Hyatt properties. I wanted to only have a list of 5, but I really like the property that is at number 6, so I didn't want to leave it off of this list. So coming in at number 6 is the Thompson Hotel in Madrid. This property has one of the most cool and chill staff members out of any property I've ever stayed at. I swear, it felt like the people who were working at this property were buddies of mine that I knew who were just trying to give me a hookup anytime that they could. The location of this property is really nice. It's walking distance to many of the different top attractions in Madrid. Now, when I went to Spain in August a couple years ago, it was blazing hot. I did not realize how hot Madrid gets in the summer. I'm talking about it was 98 degrees at 10 p.m. for pretty much every day I was there. Fortunately, the Thompson Hotel in Madrid has a rooftop pool that is super nice, and I used this pool every single day I was there to cool off after walking around and exploring the city throughout the day. The breakfast at this property is top notch, and if you have a Suite Upgrade Award certificate, this is a property you'd want to use it at because you can get a pretty spacious room with your upgrade that also has a tiny balcony attached to it. I remember when I was leaving this property thinking, I have to come back to Madrid and stay here again, except for next time I want to do it in either the spring or the fall when it's not super hot, and also bring another person with me because it is just such a nice property that you'd want to share it with someone else. Now, when I originally booked this property, it was only a Category 4 requiring 15,000 points a night. Now it is bumped up to being a Category 6 requiring 25,000 points a night, but when it was at a Category 4, it was a complete steal of a deal. And I would still book this property at being at a Category 6 because that's how great of a property this is. Excellent location, great rooftop pool, super friendly staff. This is a property you don't want to miss out if you're going to Madrid. Coming in at number 5 for my favorite Hyatt properties is going to be the Grand Hyatt in Kuala Lumpur. Now, if you're someone who is loyal to Hyatt and you climbed up their milestone ladder and you've achieved the level of milestone where you get one of their Suite Upgrade Award certificates, this would be one of the highest properties I'd recommend to redeem it at. Now, some people may disagree with me with saying that because this property is only a Category 3 property, and people will tell you that you should redeem those Suite Upgrade Award certificates at a higher property that ends up giving you more dollar value. But when it comes to the actual upgrade for the room that you get at the Kuala Lumpur when you are redeeming a suite, I mean, this is the type of room you would think that Bruce Wayne would be staying at if he was going over to Kuala Lumpur. That is how insane these suites are. I remember when I walked into my suite at Kuala Lumpur immediately thinking, man, I wish I came here with other people because the living room can fit like 6 or 7 people comfortably. That is how awesome and huge these suites are. You get a beautiful view of the city, the tub is massive, the bathroom is luxurious. I absolutely love the setup of this hotel. And for some reason, if you think that the view from your room isn't good enough, well, during breakfast, you have an amazing view of the Twin Towers in Kuala Lumpur, and the breakfast spread is huge. I remember first when I got over to the breakfast thinking, wow, there's a lot of options. But what I realized as I kept on walking was that it just wraps around like the entire floor with just different options of food to be able to get. It is absolutely fantastic. And the club lounge at this property is also top notch. There's different club lounges that you may end up visiting with Hyatt, and they're not all created equal. Some of them will just have a few drink options and maybe just a couple of snack options. But with the club lounge at the Grand Hyatt in Kuala Lumpur, this is one that you're not going to want to miss out on because there's just going to end up being so many options that you don't even need to go out to get dinner because you can just eat all your food and drinks there. Kuala Lumpur as a city does have good food options that aren't really expensive if you do want to leave the hotel. But if you don't feel like venturing out, it is really nice knowing that you don't have to leave the hotel and you're going to have a pretty decent selection of food right there at the club lounge. Kuala Lumpur as a whole is a very underrated city. Honestly, it might end up being one of the most underrated cities in the entire world because there is a lot that Kuala Lumpur has to offer and it's not very expensive, yet you barely ever hear anyone talk about it. I was only in Kuala Lumpur for like 2 days and I really wish that I stayed longer. But I will be returning to this city and I will be staying at this property and using a Suite Upgrade Award certificate to book the exact same room. And I highly recommend if any of you are looking for a cool place to redeem one of your Suite Upgrade Award certificates and you happen to be venturing over to Asia, to stay at this property because you will not be disappointed. And if you end up booking this suite, you will feel like an absolute G, I guarantee it. Coming in at number 4 for my favorite Hyatt properties is going to be the Park Hyatt in Kyoto. Now this is a top property within the points and miles world that you hear a lot of people talk about because it is ultra luxurious and you can get really good value for your points. So this is a category 8 within Hyatt's program, which means that it costs 40,000 points, and on average this property goes for close to about $2,000 a night. So you can easily be getting 5 or maybe even more cents per point with redeeming your World of Hyatt points to stay at this property. This property is even listed on some sites as being one of the top 50 properties in the entire world. And honestly, it lives up to the hype because as soon as I arrived at this property, I was blown away. So the Park Hyatt Kyoto is obviously in Kyoto, but it's not on the outskirts of Kyoto where you need to travel in to see all the main attractions. It's actually smack dab right in the middle of all the hustle and bustle, yet it's tucked away in a way that it's hidden from the crowd. It's actually pretty amazing how it's set up. So when you arrive to the hotel, you'll see many different people passing by the property, but then once you go down the driveway, it just becomes quiet, and then you see the Japanese garden right in front of the hotel, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Now I went there with a friend of mine from Japan, and as soon as we arrived, people immediately came and took our bags, and a separate woman came to guide us to the front lobby. You really will be in awe just walking up to the front door of this hotel. They offered us a drink of our choice when we arrived, so I took a glass of champagne, and fortunately, since I was a globalist, they upgraded us to a room that had a view of the city. Now the standard room that I booked is the rooms that are in the back of the hotel that just have a view of the garden, which is fine, but I really wanted a view of the city, so I was very happy when they upgraded us to that room. What I like about this property's view of the city is that Kyoto is not built very high. Many of the buildings are only like 2 stories tall, and at this property, you're either going to be like the 3rd or the 4th floor, so you can overlook the vast majority of Kyoto, and also you get to see the shrine in the center, which is really gorgeous to look at. And when I was there in January, I think that the view looked even prettier than I expected because with the snow on top of all the different Japanese buildings, it just looked absolutely gorgeous. It was like looking at a painting of Japan. It was incredible. And then when we wanted to go explore Kyoto, we just walked outside of the hotel, went down the driveway, and at the end of the driveway, we were again back in the hustle and bustle of the crowd. Now, while this property does live up to a lot of its hype, there were some things about it that I felt that weren't the greatest. One of them being the breakfast. So this property offers a Michelin star breakfast, and I got this breakfast that while I was a globalist, you are supposed to be able to get free breakfast, but with the Michelin star breakfast, you do have to pay a little bit more, I guess because it is Michelin star. And when I got this breakfast, I was incredibly disappointed by it. I've had a couple of other Michelin stars before, and I'm not going to try to pretend like I have some amazing palate and I know what tastes good and what doesn't, but if you offered me this Michelin star breakfast again this morning, I'd prefer to just have the breakfast that I made at my apartment as compared to this Michelin star breakfast. That's how disappointed I was with the Michelin star breakfast. I also did try the buffet breakfast that was offered at the Park Hyatt in Kyoto, and that breakfast I felt to be fine, but didn't feel as amazing as some of the other breakfasts I've had at other great top tier properties. I'm not sure why I dislike this breakfast so much because Japanese food is my favorite food in the entire world, and every single random mom and pop shop that I walked into, I absolutely loved what I would eat in there. Perhaps it was just high expectations, eating a Michelin star meal at the super expensive property. I'm not sure, but what I do know is that if I do happen to go back to this property again, I would just stick to the buffet breakfast. Another small critique that I have about this property is that if you want to get a workout at this property, it does have a gym, but good luck getting a good workout because I think that the largest dumbbells that they had there were 25 pounds. Now I know that Japanese people are smaller than Americans, but there's got to be some sumo wrestlers who are staying at this property, and there's no way that they're getting a serious workout with just 25-pound dumbbells. Not the biggest deal, and the gym does look pretty, but I just wish they had it being more functional. Now while this property is the most expensive property that I've ever stayed at, it still isn't my favorite property that I've ever stayed at. Does it live up to the expectations? Yes, this property is definitely one that you want to stay at if you can find award availability with your World of Hyatt points. But just because a property is the most expensive when it comes to cash costs, doesn't make it my favorite property. However, I will say that my Japanese friend who was with me staying at this property didn't realize we were going to be staying at this property before we arrived, and when we did arrive to this property, she told me that this was her #1 property in the world that she wanted to stay at. And then after we ended up leaving, she said it lived up to all of his expectations, and she was so thankful to be able to stay there with me. So if you want to have a special stay somewhere in the world, it is pretty much guaranteed that that will happen when you stay at the Park Hyatt in Kyoto. Coming in at number 3 for my favorite Hyatt properties in the world is going to be the Andaz in Munich. Now I know immediately there's going to be some people who are going to have questions that going, really? You have the Andaz Munich as one of your top 3 Hyatt properties in the entire world? Yes. I've stayed at this property multiple times, and I cannot wait to stay at this property again in the future. I absolutely love this property. Now, while I do have the Andaz Munich listed higher than the Park Hyatt Kyoto, I'm not here to tell you that the Andaz Munich is better than the Park Hyatt in Kyoto. In fact, there's probably a good chunk of people who would prefer to stay at the Park Hyatt in Kyoto over the Andaz in Munich. What I am saying is that Just because something is listed as a high cash cost doesn't mean I'm going to automatically say that that is a better stay than a property that I actually had an amazing time at multiple times. Each time I've stayed here, it's been during Germany's Oktoberfest. And if you haven't done Oktoberfest before, it is surprisingly one of the most fun things you can do if you are someone who likes to drink beer. You're just going to be sitting at a table with a bunch of strangers, listening to a live band play the same 15, 20 songs all day, yet somehow you're going to have one of the best times in your entire life. I met so many people from all around the world, just having fun conversations while drinking beer, relaxing, and just having a good time. But be careful if you get stuck at a table with Aussies, because Aussies want you to have even more fun than you probably can even handle. But going back to the Andaz in Munich, I'll admit that this isn't the best location for a hotel if you are going there just for Oktoberfest. When I first arrived to the hotel and realized how far away the tents were, while they weren't really far away, it wasn't super convenient like some other people that I spoke with who had properties that they were staying in that was just walking distance away from the tents. So if you want something that is more convenient when it comes to leaving the tents, and you don't want to have to take either public transportation or a taxi each night, then yes, it would end up making more sense to not stay at the Andaz in Munich. But if you want to stay at a really nice property that isn't right directly next to the tents, then the Andaz in Munich has to be the best option out there. I love this property. The staff is just so nice. When you first arrive, they immediately offer you a beer, and then all of the people were dressed up for Oktoberfest, either wearing their lederhosen or their women in their Bavarian dresses, and everyone's just smiling and having a good time during Oktoberfest. I remember one of the days waking up with the worst hangover after being stuck at a table with Aussies the entire day, and when I went down to the lobby, I was like, I need to get some type of Advil or something because I just feel absolutely horrible. And the staff member told me that all I just need is just some more beer. So instead I went over to the pharmacy down the street, told them that I had a horrible hangover, I need something that could help me out with that, and the pharmacist behind the desk said, no you don't, all you need is more beer. So after the pharmacist told me that, I just went back to my hotel, and instead I went into the sauna that was super nice, into the pool and just swam around and tried to relax, chilled out in the lobby, and I also went up to my room that had a suite, and this suite just looked so luxurious. One of the days I met a few people out there and I invited them all back to my hotel room, and when people came walking into my room, they were like, are you a celebrity? How do you have a room like this? That is the type of wow factor that happens at the Andaz in Munich when it comes to their suites. And I loved how modern the room was. So there's blinds that are going to be covering the window obviously, but the blinds were moving based off of how the sun was coming in. So if the sun was coming in bright, the blinds would actually adjust and stop the sun from coming in overly bright. But when the sun moved and the sun wasn't coming in so hard, the blinds would open up so you could have a good view of the city. Now it isn't some crazy cool view of the city like you can get at the Park Hyatt Kyoto or at the Grand Hyatt in Kuala Lumpur, but I would say that it's a relaxing view and not an eyesore. And the breakfast at this property is definitely really, really good. I love the way that they make the omelets here. Now I knew that I already really liked this property, but when I realized how good this property was when I moved on my final day in Munich over to a Hilton property, and that property just felt like multiple steps below the Andaz in Munich. And the bar at the Andaz in Munich is super chill. People are always there, and many of the people who I spoke with who happened to be at that bar didn't even realize that that building was a hotel. They just like to go to that bar to get a couple of drinks. So what I found to work for me was leaving the tents early at Oktoberfest to beat the crowd, and then just chilling at the bar at the hotel with people who are also in lederhosen, just having a good time for the night. This property has a really good staff, phenomenal suites if you happen to have a suite upgrade award certificate that you're looking to use. It has a good location, but not great if you want to go over to the tents. But if you're someone who doesn't need to be inside of all the hustle and bustle, then this can end up still being a property that you could stay at and still be able to enjoy the tents as well. But if you happen to be going to Munich when it's not Oktoberfest, then I can't see any reason why you wouldn't stay at this property because it is just absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to go back, and most likely, it's going to be during Oktoberfest again. Ein Prost. Coming in at number 2 for my favorite Hyatt properties is the Park Hyatt in Saigon. Now perhaps this is recency bias, but I really like staying at this property. I remember before booking this property, I was wondering if I should even book it because this was a property that goes for like $200 to $300 a night, but there were other 5-star luxury properties in Saigon that I could book for like close to $100 a night, and I wouldn't need to redeem any of my points to be able to do it. I could just do it with cash and still have an amazing stay. But I'm so happy that I did decide to choose the Park Hyatt in Saigon because this is just an absolutely awesome property. It definitely lived up to its Park Hyatt name. And when I go back to Saigon, I 100% will stay at this property again. This property has a very classic French colonial look. So if you like that style, then you'll absolutely love the look of this property. Every single day there was people who weren't even staying at the property going into the lobby, just taking photos, I'm assuming for like Instagram or some type of social media, because they just love the decor inside of the lobby. And this wasn't just people wearing t-shirts and jeans. People were just as nice as they possibly could. You would think that they were going to like the Oscars or something like that. When I arrived to this property, someone immediately took my bag and someone else guided me to the front desk. And while at the front desk, I was being checked in, and then one of the managers came over and started chatting with me, and she was one of the most lovely people that I ever met. She was telling me all the different cool things I can do inside of the city, and then after getting checked in, she walked me up to my room and into my suite that I used my Suite Upgrade Award certificate with. Inside my room on the coffee table was this whole setup for a birthday gift for me since I was staying at this property for my birthday. Now, I don't even remember telling anyone that it was my birthday. I'm assuming that they have that information in the computer, but they had this whole nice setup for me with a couple different cakes wishing me happy birthday. There was these mixed nuts in these containers. There was dragon fruit, a bottle of wine, a card wishing me happy birthday. It was just so sweet of this property to do this for me. The best way I can describe the Park Hyatt in Saigon is if you've ever flown internationally in first class, the way that the flight attendants treat you as a first class passenger is how the staff treats you at the Park Hyatt in Saigon. You are a first class customer at their hotel. And the manager who walked me up to my room, I saw her 3 different times at the hotel, and she remembered my name every single time. And she would chat with me, and she just was one of the best workers that I've ever seen at any hotel in the entire world. She is someone that I will 100% remember the next time that I go to visit this property. And the location of this property is perfect. You're in District 1, which is where all the Western tourists stay. It's funny because when you're in District 1 and you're walking down the street, all you see is like a lot of European people. You do see some Vietnamese people, but there's just a ton of European people. And then when you leave District 1 and you go over to a different district, then you just start seeing only Vietnamese people all around. So you can pretty easily tell what is the tourist spots and then where's the local spots. But the Park Hyatt Saigon is right across the street from the Opera House, so if you want to catch a show there, then you can. The pool at this property is pretty nice, and Saigon as a whole is a very hot and humid city, so you're probably going to want to access it at some point. And while I really like the breakfast of the other hotels on this list, except for the Park Hyatt in Kyoto, none of them are at the same level as the Park Hyatt in Saigon. The breakfast at this property was just absolutely incredible. My best breakfast at any Hyatt hotel. So as a globalist, you have the option of either ordering off the menu or just going over to the buffet. The buffet was just so good, and what I really liked about the buffet here was that they would switch out the options for the food like every other day. So it wasn't just that you had all of this great food, but if you stayed here for 5 days, you're just eating the same food every single day. After 2 days, you would go back and you would look and you would go, huh, this is actually different stuff than there was just a couple of days ago. That to me is what I want, and I also like having the option to be able to order off the menu, and the menu options are spectacular as well. And I'm not a coffee person, but I became an egg coffee fan after I left this hotel. When it was time for me to go, I just really didn't want to have to leave this property. Listen, are there going to be other options in Saigon that end up being 5-star luxury properties for cheaper? 100%. Do I still recommend this property? 1000%. Because this ends up being one of the best Hyatt hotels in the world. And coming in at number 1 for my favorite Hyatt property in the world is the Park Hyatt Tokyo. Now the Park Hyatt Tokyo is probably not number 1 on most other people's list, but it is on mine because I absolutely love this property. I had really high expectations before arriving to this property, and when I left, it exceeded all my expectations by a long shot. Now, this property is currently going through renovations because it is an older property. I mean, the room that I was staying in had a DVD player in there, and I don't even know where to even get DVDs anymore. But even though the property was older, it didn't feel older to me, it just felt classic, and I loved it. Years before being even in the world of Points and Miles, I watched the movie Lost in Translation, and this movie made me want to go to Japan. It was such a fun movie to watch, and a big portion of the movie takes place at the Park Hyatt in Tokyo. Now, I didn't have the same experience as Bill Murray in the movie, but I had my own magical experience for the first time visiting Japan. If you want to explore places in Shinjuku, which is a super busy part of Tokyo, then this property is a great one to stay at. It isn't directly above the train station like the Hyatt Regency down the street, but isn't very far from it. Now, I'm not sure what it's going to look like after the changes, but when you first enter this property, you're going to see this super nice lobby. And then once you go through the lobby, you go up the elevator to the 40th floor, and then on the 40th floor, you go over to another lobby where they're going to check you into your room, and it seems like there's just so many different people who are there to greet you and then try to help you with anything that they can, because I got passed on between many different people just to get checked into my room. And when I say that they passed me on to other people, it wasn't in a bad way. It felt more like I was Will Smith going into this hotel and everyone just wanted to make sure that I was taken care of. But as you go through the hotel, you walk through this library, and it feels like you're in some rich library that maybe someone like Bill Gates would have in his house. But after being introduced to different staff members and the manager, one of the staff members walked me up to my room, and I had such a beautiful view of the city of Tokyo. As you can probably guess from watching this video, I am huge on views, and there isn't going to be a much better view you can get of Tokyo than staying at the Park Hyatt. I mean, whether it's during the day or at night, you're just going to love looking out the window in your room. And the breakfast at this property is again top notch. Now I do think that the Park Hyatt in Saigon did exceed it, but the breakfast at the property is really, really good. And I remember that there was like a longer wait time at this property when I was trying to get my breakfast. I was wondering like what's taking them so long, but when they would give me like the fruit that I had, ordering just a bowl of fruit, it seemed like they just picked it off of the plants outside, and I was just blown away by how fresh it was. But it wasn't just the breakfast or the view outside your room in the hotel that made this property so special. It was how they made you feel special when you were staying at this property. So during my first trip to Japan, I met a lovely Japanese woman, and I took her out on a date to get drinks. And as we were walking around the city, I asked her if she's ever been to the New York bar, which is the bar that's at the top of the Park Hyatt Tokyo. And she said that she's never been to it, but she has heard about it because it is a famous bar that people like to go to. So I told her that we should go there, so we went over to the Park Hyatt Tokyo, we went up the elevator, and I remember being blown away just by the hotel because while she knew of the hotel, she's never actually been inside of it. And then we went up the second elevator to get up to the New York bar. There was a huge line of people just waiting to get in. And I remember seeing the people who were working the front desk walking over to the different guests, telling them how long they're gonna have to wait. They're going over to some people, telling them that it's about a 45-minute wait, and then other people behind them, that's gonna be like a 55-minute wait. The people in front of us, that's gonna be over an hour wait. And then they came over to me, and they asked me if I was staying at the property. I told them yes. They asked me for my name and my room number. I gave them this information. They went back to the desk. They came back over to us, and they said, right this way. And we cut the entire line, and they sat us down in front of the live band at the New York bar. I felt like Henry Hill in the Goodfellas movie, just cutting by everybody, and everyone's like, who are these people who are going by? And even she wondered, hey, how is it that you do this? And I just played it off like, what do you mean? You didn't think I was gonna get us in? But honestly, I didn't think we were gonna get in. But because I was a guest at the Park Hyatt Tokyo, they treated me like a special person. And that moment is one that I will never forget, and it'll always be a fond memory for the rest of my life. I mean, honestly, when we were waiting in line, I was sweating a little bit because I thought they were gonna come over to us, tell us that we were gonna have to wait an hour and a half, and they were gonna have to leave, go back down both of those elevators, and I was gonna feel pretty stupid. But the fact that they made me not feel stupid and I was able to just cut the entire line, I've never felt more like an elite member than at that moment at the Park Hyatt Tokyo. Now, I'm not sure what the Park Hyatt's gonna be like after its remodel and when it reopens, but I hope that it keeps the same essence as the old Park Hyatt Tokyo because that property was just absolutely incredible. But there you have it. That's my list for my top 6 favorite Hyatt properties around the world. Now, I know that everyone's not going to agree with my list, but I'd love to hear in the comment section down below, what are your favorite Hyatt properties that you've stayed at? Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you happen to have any questions, you can drop it down in the comment section down below and do the best I can answer it. If you happen to be interested in any cards, check out my links in the description box to learn more. If you do decide to use any of my links, it does really help out the channel. I'll be incredibly thankful for your support. If you want to become a Points Miles booking expert, go to Point Travel 101 to purchase my course. After completing my course, you'll feel confident with booking business and first-class flights all over the world. If you have a Relax video, do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video, and have a beautiful rest of your day. Peace.